Hello, and welcome back to Game Domain. Today we have finally put out this video, one that we have been pushing off for almost a year now. But this topic is becoming more and more relevant due to this franchise's brand new upcoming game coming out November 16th. Have you figured it out yet? Well, if not, we are referring to the Pokémon franchise, and yes, we are finally giving you guys our ranking of all of the 16 core series Pokémon games. For your knowledge, the dual release versions are counted as one game, but third versions and remakes, such as Pokémon Emerald or Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, count as their own separate game. So in all, that adds up to 16 main series core Pokémon games, excluding Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee of course, as we have not gotten the privilege to play them yet. Throughout this video, we will also be referring to the American names for characters and versions, as well as North American release dates for each version. For anybody who has watched our Ranking the Zelda Games video, this video will follow the same relative layout as that ranking video, just based off of a much different content, obviously. And if you haven't seen our Ranking the Zelda Games video yet, well, go check that one out. It has been our most popular video over the past 9 months and is certainly a worthwhile watch, so we will leave that link in the description. And if you like this video, also be sure to check out our Evolution of Pokemon documentary, which was recently re-released on our channel as one video rather than its previous existence as a two-part video. Alright, enough rambling. Let's get into number 16 of our countdown. Our pick for the worst Pokemon game may come as a surprise to some, and as a very predictable choice for others. It pains us to put Pokemon Black and White at the bottom of this list, as we don't hate these games, or hate any Pokemon games for that matter. But these games weren't that great to begin with, and then proceeded to get completely outdone by their direct sequels, Pokémon Black 2 and White 2. Pokémon Black and White released way too many Pokémon into the series, adding 156 Pokémon to the roster, which is 5 more Pokémon than the original Generation 1 jump-started the franchise with. Although every new generation is bound to have bad Pokémon in it, these Generation 5 games brought a lot of bad ones into the series, and didn't even bring many great ones in it to even things out. The designs ranged from kinda cool to flat out lazy and Digimon looking, to even just plain horrible. And there are even a few Pokemon that are so boring and unrecognizable to the point where 90% of Pokemon fans have forgotten they even existed. I mean, be honest, how many of you can picture a Maractus in your head? This is partially due to the fact that so many Pokemon were added, and Pokemon like Maractus were only available in basically one specific patch of tall grass in one discrete location in the region. And most of these are on the left side of the region because, oh yeah, we forgot to mention, the entire right side of the map is left undiscovered after you beat the main story. Now, you may think this leads to a great post-game, but half of the people who play these games don't even explore this area, and the ones who do are welcomed into an oddly high-leveled frenzy of wild battles, and really no additions to what was a great storyline. So, with all that said about these games, we are not taking away from the fact that these games gave us a great and in-depth storyline, but the bads outweigh the goods, and this game is sadly ranked at the bottom of our list. Now, on to number 15. The hate comments are already pouring in for this one, but hear us out. The reason we are ranking Pokémon Sun and Moon so low on this list is the fact that their successors Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon mastered the flaws that this game had, which leaves us no other choice but to put these games at this low spot on our list. Sun and Moon is basically the first thing that old-time Pokemon fans point to when they bring up the fact that Pokemon is getting too easy and too hand-holdy. These games are the most linear in the franchise and don't even pose a challenge at times. Your rival Hau, who is a very easygoing and easy-to-beat rival to boot, even stops to heal you before battle. Old-timers like us, who remember when Blue used to just appear out of nowhere and battle you no matter what state your Pokemon were in, don't like to see the games moving in this direction. The story was also very predictable and can be weirdly confusing at times. There are no real plot twists, but some of the stuff just doesn't make much sense, even for Pokemon game standard. For instance, what is the reasoning behind Lusamine turning into an Ultra Beast? Stuff like that will really just make your head turn. These games also introduced the new trail system, eradicating the series' classic 8 gyms in a region motif. This was an interesting change and ended up being a great move by Game Freak. The new Pokemon introduced weren't all that bad themselves, and there were really a bunch of cool ones and no widely hated Pokemon like the previous 2 generations. Like we said earlier, it pains us to put these games this low on the list, but the revamps really do make these versions obsolete. Our entry at the number 14 slot has really not much to do with the actual game itself, but mainly the fact that the game is basically the same as its original versions. Considered one of the Pokemon's upper versions, or really just third versions, Pokémon Crystal is relatively the same great game as Pokémon Gold and Silver, just with the added plot of the legendary beast Suicune appearing throughout the story, and the climax of the game ending with the player catching Suicune. In the post-game, you can also catch both Johto legendaries, Lugia and Ho-Oh, each in their respective locations of the Whirl Islands and the Tin Tower. The reason this game is ranked so low on this list is due to the fact of it being relatively the same game as its originals, which happens to be the case of our next entry as well. So once again, this game is definitely much better than its spot makes it seem, but has to be down on this list in order to be fair to other games who are their own games and not slightly changed versions. Coming in as the 13th ranked Pokemon game is none other than Pokémon Yellow. As we know, we will get a lot of heat for this choice, just as our choice for number 14. We will once again reiterate the fact that this ranking is due to the relative similarity to the original Pokémon Red and Blue. Yellow follows more or less the storyline of the Pokémon anime, and your starter Pikachu follows you around outside of the Pokéball, just like Ash. You are also given all 3 starter Pokémon throughout the game, just as Ash does in the anime. Besides these changes to correlate with the Pokémon anime, Pokémon Yellow is relatively the same game as Red and Blue, just as Crystal is to Gold and Silver. So that reason alone puts these two in a later part of the list. Coming in at number 12 are the direct sequel remakes to the Generation 5 Pokémon Black and White versions. Black 2 and White 2 took what was already arguably the most in-depth storyline in the franchise and made it just so much better. Black 2 and White 2 immediately addressed some of the key problems fans had with Black and White, and set the story 2 years after the events of the originals, starting the game off in a whole new town and adding a new roster of non-Gen 5 Pokemon in the game. This was one of the major discretions of Black and White, and it was certainly solved in these remakes. New areas of Unova that were relatively unexplored during the main story of Black and White were given a platform in the main storyline, and it brought the Unova region in full circle and started to give fans reasoning to call it one of the Pokemon's best regions. Fusion Pokemon were also introduced in these games' story, as the legendary Kyurem was fused with either Reshiram or Zekrom. This is a feature that never returned to the series until the most recent installments of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, which follow the same general idea of fusion, just with a different story and legendaries, of course. Although these games improve on many of Black and White's flaws, these games still find themselves at the number 12 spot on our list. As we mentioned before, Pokemon Sun and Moon were criticized for too much hand-holding, and you can consider the start of this to be with the Pokemon X and Y versions back in 2013. These games introduced us to the then funky and now outdated 3D graphics that we have become accustomed to for the last couple years on the Nintendo 3DS. These games also introduced 72 new Pokemon, a few great ones and a lot of bad ones, the new Fairy type, character customization, Mega Evolution, and a whole lot of fan service. Let's start with the bad about these games, and then we'll finish off with the good in a bit. These games featured probably the worst rival to date in the series, and from the start, it was hard to even tell who your real rival was, and it seemed like your rival was just somebody who popped up for a friendly battle a couple times. There was no meaning in your fighting, and it just felt like a regular training battle that you wanted to blow right through, which is definitely contrary to the other games in which you look forward to beating your rival to a pulp every time they cross your path. And to really prove our point, try to remember what your rival's name is in X and Y. Tell us in the comments if you remember, and most of you probably won't due to how forgettable your rival in this game is. This game's story is fairly lackluster as well, especially coming off of what is arguably the greatest story in Pokemon, being Pokemon Black and White and their sequels. There were much fewer Pokemon released in Generation 6 than in the previous generation, and this was mainly due to the addition of the very popular Mega Evolution. Now that we're talking about Mega Evolution, let's get into the good that these games have to offer. These games introduced Mega Evolutions, which is now one of Pokemon's fans' favorite features in the games. These titles also introduced character customization, where the player can make the protagonist look more like them, adding a sense of realism and relation to the Pokemon game world. Pokemon X and Y were revolutionary additions into the franchise and have more or less created the new Pokemon formula we have seen for the last couple years, but it still finds its way at the number 11 spot on our list. Coming in at the number 10 slot is the most recent installment in the series, and these games are the direct revamp of Pokemon Sun and Moon. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon pose an alternate story to the one of the original Pokemon Sun and Moon and expand on the ideas of Ultra Beast and the legendary being Necrozma. These games return to the idea of legendary Pokemon fusions as showcased in Black 2 and White 2, as Solgaleo and Lunala are fused with Necrozma in their respective versions. These games also introduce the Warp Ride feature, in which you travel through the Ultra Wormhole on either the back of Solgaleo or Lunala and see how far you can travel, and then enter a portal that has a highly increased shiny probability and the chance of being a legendary from the series' past installments. The further you go, the more rings will appear around each wormhole, and oh yeah, every wormhole has a different color which correlates with what terrain of Ultra World you will enter, and which ultimately determines what Pokemon you can catch. This feature is really the main thing that makes these games just that much better than the originals, and the addition of the Ultra Recon Squad made the story much more interesting and surprising than that of the original Sun and Moon. But other than that, these games were really a disappointment to most fans, and there was never really any hype buildup, and the hype that was there diminished rather quickly. After the game's first 2 months of being out, the only people who were playing were really Pokemon YouTubers doing shiny quests. And for that reason, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon are our 10th best Pokemon game. Our number 9 entry may come as a surprise to some of you, but the only reason these games are this low is due to their mastered version really making them obsolete. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl were released back in 2007 in North America, when Pokemon was at its lowest point to date. Nintendo took a risk by extending the series with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, and those games' lifespan lasted about 4 years until Nintendo tried yet again to regain the popularity of the late 1990s, and they sure did succeed. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl gave us so many great new features and opened us to the Pokemon world in a beautiful way that nobody ever imagined. Thanks to Nintendo DS's engine, of course. These games gave us the greatest soundtrack of any Pokemon game to date, an intensely deep underlying motif of darkness throughout the storyline, and arguably the most difficult Pokemon game other than the first 2 generations. Now, you may be asking what makes this game on the lower portion of our list, and that is mainly because fans consider its upper version, Pokémon Platinum, the definitive Generation 4 Pokemon experience, as it was a major step up from these 2 games and has really made them obsolete. Diamond and Pearl are also the slowest moving games of the franchise, and the difficulty jump to the DS's engine is certainly evident in the pace of these games. The walking and battling feels almost in slow motion, especially coming off of the incredibly fast-moving Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Up to basically the first gym in Oreburgh City, the beginning of these games feels like just one big hour-long tutorial. Generation 4 also gave us a slew of new and fantastically designed Pokemon, such as Garchomp, Infernape, and even the mythical Darkrai. The roster of new Pokemon also included final evolutions and pre-evolutions to many Generation 1, 2, and 3 Pokemon, such as Electivire, Magmortar, Ambipom, and new evolutions like Glaceon and Leafeon. These games have continued to be referred to as one of the franchise's most loved, and made the jump to the DS a lot easier for millions of Pokemon fans around the world. The new bottom touch sensitive screen of the DS opened the door to about a dozen different gadgets to play around with, and the Wi-Fi connectivity opened the door to online competitive battling and the online global trading system. These games gave us so much that we love, and although they are only ranked 9th on our list, the ranking of their upper version will certainly show you how we really feel about these DS classics. Coming in at number 8 are the series' first games on the Game Boy Advance console, and boy is this a nostalgic one. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were the first Pokemon games that most of us here at Game Domain played, so it is really hard to put these games in this spot, but we do have to be fair. First off, these games mastered the power of the Game Boy Advance and gave us the most fast-paced game to date, with an incredibly orchestrated soundtrack and a great roster of Pokemon. The Hoenn region is a region that contains everything from wide-open seas, tropical islands, volcanoes, rainforests, and peaceful and serene waterside cities. Locations like Lava Ridge Town, Pacific Town, and Evergrande City were just so well thought out, and each of them had their own features that make them unique. And with the vast amount of different kinds of terrain in Hoenn comes the vast amount of different kinds of Pokemon species. There's no other region where you have a tropical banana tree dinosaur and a flying ice sphere, and yes, we are referring to Tropius and Glalie respectively. The soundtrack of the Ruby and Sapphire games is masterful, and the blaring trumpets mixed with serene and light undertones blends together to give us one of the greatest orchestral soundtracks in Nintendo history. Some of these games' main criticisms stem from the game's story and the lack of motive from the evil team. Team Aqua in Pokémon Sapphire is looking to cover the whole world in water through the power of the legendary water type Kyogre. And Team Magma in Pokémon Ruby is looking to take all of the world's water away through the power of the legendary ground type Groudon. Yes, you heard that right. I mean, really, Game Freak? I know you developed this game like almost 17 years ago, but this is the best you could do? Both teams' motives don't make any sense, and both of them would make the world inhabitable. Many people also think that the graphics are lazy and not much advanced from the previous versions on the Game Boy Color, but we certainly beg to differ. These games and their sprites have an iconic look and feel to them, something that can never again be replicated. The Hoenn rivals, either Brendan or May depending on what gender protagonist you chose, are really very easy to defeat, and their main criticism belongs to the fact that you don't even face their fully evolved starter Pokemon. And they don't even feel like your real rival, as the last trainer you face before the Elite Four is Wally, who built up the courage and strength to take you on before you face your toughest challenge yet. These games have an incredible amount to offer and are certainly worthy of a virtual console release on the Nintendo 3DS come this September. So, with all that said, Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire are our 8th best Pokémon game of all time, finding themselves right in the middle of the pack. Coming in at number 7 is our first remake on the list, and that certainly shows that the remakes are valued very highly as games in the franchise. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire took what were already great games and enhanced them into incredible 3D graphics and introduced various new features to make the Hoenn experience just that much better. The story was the same as the original games, but let's get into the features that made these games so great. The two biggest and most notable features are definitely that of the soaring feature, in which you use the Eon Flute to call in either Latios or Latias and fly around a beautiful 3D map of Hoenn to any location you choose. This feature also opened the door to the Hoopa portals that can be discovered at various Mirage spots. This was an expansion on two major things from the Pokemon series, being the original Mirage Island in the Generation 3 games, and the Hoopa portals that teleport in legendaries from the Hoopa movie. Almost every legendary through Generation 6 was available to catch in these Mirage spots in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. The Mirage spots are a very cool feature that can really have its own entirely different video, so we won't get into all of its details right now. The second major feature of these games is the added post-game storyline of the Delta episode. The main thing that makes the Delta episode great is, of course, its incredible climax of hopping on the back of Mega Rayquaza and cracking open the meteor to uncover the triangle puzzle that only a few thousand people ever witnessed from back in the original Generation 3 games, which of course led to the climactic reveal of the highest leveled wild Pokemon in history, the level 80 Deoxys. Other than the soaring and Delta episode features, these games are basically just a revamped version of the originals, but certainly do show us the Hoenn region in the most beautiful and up-to-date way possible, which makes Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire worthy of being the 7th ranked Pokémon game of all time. Coming in at the number 6 spot on our ranking is the first ever remake we saw in the Pokémon series, and we are of course referring to the Kanto remakes of Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green. With the Generation 3 graphics being many fans' favorite in the series, it is no surprise that the version that took the franchise's originals and remade them with those beloved pixels is one of the most popular. Fire Red and Leaf Green are probably the remakes that have the closest correlation to their original counterparts, and the main story really has no differences at all. With these games being the first remakes in the series, it is no surprise that Nintendo stuck very close to the originals, a formula that they have moved further and further away from with each new remake to come. Besides graphical and gameplay enhancements, these games are basically the same as their originals. So what makes these games so great? The greatness of these games is mainly attributed to nostalgia of returning to the Kanto region and just expanding on one of the greatest video game stories ever told. That of a 10-year-old kid who takes down an evil crime lord and becomes the most powerful Pokemon trainer there ever was. These games also added the Sevii Islands into the Kanto region, and boy were these islands great to explore. These islands have plenty of Pokemon foreign to the Kanto region, and even contain the mythical Pokemon Deoxys on Birth Island, and the Johto legendaries Ho-Oh and Lugia at Naval Rock. But here's the catch. You can only travel to those locations if you went to the Japanese-only events back in 2004, and of course cheating devices. These games also came with a free wireless adapter, which plugged into the Game Boy Advance and made players able to wirelessly battle and trade with other players near them with their own adapter. These games even had connectability with Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald as well, which was definitely a big technological achievement for Game Freak and Nintendo to make these games wirelessly connect with each other. Of course, we don't appreciate this quite as much now as we used to, but this major breakthrough is just one of the many reasons that these games are worthy of being the 6th ranked Pokemon games. Coming in at number 5 is possibly one of the most groundbreaking and influential games of all time. This spot belongs to none other than Pokémon Red and Blue. Now, some of you may be wondering how there could be 4 games we deem greater than Pokémon Red and Blue due to the fact that in our Ranking the Nintendo Games video, we ranked them as 7th best of all time, thus making them the greatest Pokemon game of all time, right? But that is not how we see it. We made that list based on the impact each of those 10 games had on pop culture, Nintendo, the respective franchises, and of course, the game's individual greatness. Based on those characteristics, the original Pokemon titles are by far the best Pokemon games. But comparing them to other Pokemon titles in just physical greatness, they don't really outdo the other 4 games we have placed above them. So with that being said, let's get into what makes these games so amazing. Pokémon Red and Blue laid down the foundation for the whole franchise to build on, and boy did they do a great job of it. These games gave us one of the most intriguing video game stories to date, and made everybody who played the game really connect with the protagonist and every move they made in order to take down the evil Team Rocket. These games also have a lot of dark undertones to them that only the developed mind and wiser children can comprehend, leaving the younger players clueless to the dark void hanging over Lavender Town and the Pokemon Tower. Giovanni's story is also something that is very overlooked by the Nintendo community, and not many people understand the true inner conflict that was well thought out and implemented into these games by the developers at Game Freak. These games also, of course, introduced us to the wonderful Kanto region and the unforgettable original 151 Pokemon. And if you forget them, just be sure to sing along with the Poké Rap. All of these Pokemon had unique and creative designs, and many of them just could never have their greatness replicated in fandom. These games did so much for the beloved Pokemon franchise, and their greatness is certainly worth the spot of the number 5 ranked Pokemon game of all time. And if you want to hear more about these games, then be sure to check out both our top 10 Nintendo games of all time, and especially our Pokemon Red and Blue review and analysis video, the links to which will be in the description. Coming in at number 4 is the ultimate version of the original Generation 3 games, and the optimal way to play through the Hoenn region. Pokemon Emerald takes the best of both Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, and just adds an incredible amount of extra content to it. The story stays relatively the same, except for the ending. Instead of heading to the Seafloor Cavern, you travel to the isolated Spear Pillar and summon the legendary dragon, Rayquaza, who proceeds to descend upon the battle between Kyogre and Groudon in Sootopolis City, ending the fighting and thus completing your quest to stop both evil teams and restoring peace and stability to the citizens of Sootopolis City, and ultimately all of Hoenn. Although the main storyline is the same as the games before it, Pokemon Emerald did give fans what is arguably the greatest and most popular post-game feature of all time. And yes, we are talking about the Great Battle Frontier. The Battle Frontier is located on a discrete island south of Route 130, and houses 7 different battle facilities for the player to indulge in. Each of these facilities have their own special features and even restrictions to make your battling experience more difficult or even easier than normal. These facilities are incredibly difficult to defeat, and in doing so you will have to end up facing one of the dastardly Frontier Brains. On the Battle Frontier Island, you are also able to surf over to the Artisan Cave, where you are able to catch all sorts of foreign Johto Pokemon that are not available in Ruby and Sapphire, and in the main story of Emerald. This game also gives you the opportunity to eventually catch all 3 Hoenn legendaries, and all at level 70. Pokémon Emerald adds so much to the already great Generation 3 games and the Hoenn region, and it is considered by many to be, along with Pokémon Platinum, the ultimate Pokémon version. This game will always have a huge space in not only our hearts here at Game Domain, but in the hearts of millions of Pokémon fans around the world. And that is what makes this game worthy of being the 4th best Pokémon game of all time. Now we are getting to esteemed territory, and these next 3 choices are all very close together. This next game is most likely going to get us a lot of hate comments on why it is not number 1, but we're sure that if you just wait it out for that number 1 choice, you will understand where we are coming from. Coming in as the number 3 greatest Pokemon game of all time is in fact Pokemon Gold and Silver. These games can only be described in one word: masterpiece. These games were originally designed to be the final entry in the Pokemon franchise, and as great as these games would have been as a finale, we are certainly glad that Nintendo decided to keep this franchise going. Pokemon Gold and Silver were released right when Pokemon was in its phase of world gaming domination, and so everybody who played the first games immediately grabbed themselves a copy, and people who just got old enough to get their own Pokemon games bought these games as their first. Pokemon Gold and Silver introduced us to the incredible world of Johto and 100 brand new Pokemon that fans fell in love with immediately. Team Rocket has banded back together in search of their leader Giovanni, who fled after Red defeated him at the Viridian City Gym back in Pokemon Red and Blue. And yeah, the whole continuation aspect in these games is really great. These games are not just 3 years later in the timeline, but the physical game itself references events from Red and Blue, which is really cool, and something never again seen in the games. Team Rocket takes control of the radio station in Goldenrod City to send a radio notification out to Giovanni, but they were never answered. You defeat Team Rocket yet again and make your way to the Indigo Plateau and defeat Champion Lance to officially become the greatest trainer in the land. But wait, what about Red? Well, in these games, you can really determine who is truly the greatest trainer. Upon defeating the Elite Four, the player gets a ticket to board the SS Aqua, which takes them to Vermilion City in the Kanto region. What ensues is hands down the greatest post-game feature in any Pokemon game ever, and truly makes these games one of the greatest video game sequels of all time. Period. Exploring Kanto isn't even the same as in the first game, as there are certain areas shut off from access. This makes the venture back seem more realistic, as it really shows that these 3 years did pass. But in order to truly defeat these great masterpieces, you must beat one final trainer. After defeating all Cantonian gyms as well, the player will have 18 gym badges, and certainly some very powerful Pokemon. Venture into Mount Silver, which is located right on the Johto side of the Indigo Plateau. After making your way through the many high-leveled and incredibly difficult Pokemon, you will reach the summit and meet your ultimate test. With no words exchanged, you challenge Red to a battle, and he leads the party of Pokemon that have the highest level of any Pokemon in any game ever. This is the hardest battle you will ever partake in, and if you win, then you are truly the greatest there ever was. These games gave us so much that we love about this franchise, and they continue to be the most popular original games in the series, and that is what makes them worthy of being the 3rd greatest Pokemon games of all time. There is truly not much else to say about this next entry that hasn't already been said. This game was designed by Game Freak to be the ultimate Pokemon edition, and that was even stated by head producer Junichi Masuda in an interview. Pokemon Platinum took everything that was great about the Generation 4 games, Diamond and Pearl, and made them just so much better. The story that was put together for Platinum is relatively the same as for Diamond and Pearl, but they are anything but the same when you get to the end. Looker is introduced in this game as a detective spying on the acts of Team Galactic, and he instantly became a fan favorite and has returned for multiple games after. The end of this game brings you into the Distortion world, which inhabits the most clever and confusing puzzle in all of Pokemon. You will walk, jump, and even walk on walls through a purple haze, which basically represents the hell that Giratina was sent to. You enter this world to stop Giratina from causing havoc after being seduced by Cyrus and Team Galactic. You can then capture Giratina and can use him to defeat the Elite Four if you wish. The post-game is similar to Diamond and Pearl as well, although you can now catch a roaming Generation 1 legendary bird, and catch both Dialga and Palkia at level 70. These games gave us a great story twist and fixed the main complaint about the Generation 4 games: the slow pace. Pokémon Platinum was released 2 years after Diamond and Pearl, which gave Game Freak time to master the DS's engine and speed these games up. People love the Sinnoh region and all it entails, but many people won't go back and play Diamond and Pearl due to its slowness, especially in comparison to the fast-paced games we have today on the 3DS. Platinum made this problem a thing of the past, and fans will still go back and play this game to get the full enjoyment out of the Generation 4 games in the beautiful Sinnoh region. This game's title as the ultimate version of Pokémon and its everlasting love from both its creators and fans worldwide make it more than worthy of being the second greatest Pokémon game of all time. Now, if you took an internet poll and asked some Pokémon fans what they believe is objectively the greatest Pokémon game based on everything from smoothness to music and to, of course, in-game content, there will probably be a majority pushing for the case of these two games that we are deeming the greatest Pokémon games of all time. Pokémon HeartGold and SoulSilver took the previous greatest generation in the series and remade them to the point of almost perfection, ranging anywhere from the updated graphics to the updated orchestral sounds, and even added new areas like the beautiful Route 47 and the Johto Safari Zone. The Johto region is by far the most well-designed region, and getting to see the region in the then perfect graphical powers of the Nintendo DS was truly special. These games showed us the most cherished regions of Johto and Kanto in a way we never thought we could see them before. The music in these games is incredibly orchestrated, just like every Pokémon soundtrack, but this game's is just specifically special. The main track that defines how great the music in these games is the Route 47 theme, which truly characterizes this beautiful new route added into the remakes. Route 47 is located on the cliffside on the westernmost part of the Johto map, and it is an awfully fun place to explore. Every ladder, opening, and wooden bridge blended together makes for one of the greatest design routes in all of Pokémon. And there is still one more major feature we have to talk about that in itself could make these games the greatest Pokémon games to some people. If you ask somebody why these games are so great, the number one answer will most likely be because of walking Pokémon. And they do have some true validity in that statement. Every single Pokémon through Generation 4 walked behind the protagonist throughout the journey. No matter how big they are or how small they are, they walked behind the character. They all had their own unique walking sprites and accompanied the player through what we have deemed the greatest Pokémon adventure of all time, and we feel very confident in saying that our judgment now will reign supreme for many games to come. And so that closes out our long-awaited Ranking the Pokémon Games video. So what did you think of our list? What Pokémon game do you think is the best, and also what is your favorite? They're not always the same. What series would you like us to rank next? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And be sure to check out some of our other recent videos, which we will leave links to in the description, as well as our Discord and new info regarding new channel updates. Our Discord is open to you guys to come and chat with our staff members and each other about gaming, so don't be afraid to join. We also launched a second channel, Game Domain News. There, we will be bringing you guys weekly news updates for consoles like the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch, as well as games such as Fortnite. We also encourage you guys to download Cash for Apps using our link in the description. Cash for Apps is an app that allows you to get points for just downloading apps on your phone, and you don't even need to keep the apps. You can save up the points to use for gift cards for various different online stores, and some of the gift cards can be used to purchase V-Bucks for Fortnite. And once again, don't forget to check out our top 10 greatest Nintendo games of all time, ranking the Zelda games, and Pokémon Red and Blue review and analysis, which were all mentioned earlier. Stay tuned to Game Domain for more great content, and as always, thank you for watching Game Domain.
Pokémon! Gotta catch 'em all! Gotta catch 'em all!